Paschal Donohue, Minister for Public Expenditure and Reform. What did you make of that ESRI report?
So the report just underlined the very significant economic change that's happened in Ireland, particularly since the mid-1990s. Wages, employment and economic activity in our country have profoundly changed over the last decades, meaning that circumstances here in our country are very different, not just in the Northern Ireland, as the report has outlined, but to many other parts of Europe.
Okay. Would you regard yourself as, would you like to see United Ireland
It
in
is
your lifetime?
something that I aspire to, but
It is in the name of Fine Gael, isn't it? Isn't it
it is
Fine Gael,
something
the United Ireland
it is
Party?
something I aspire to for political and social reasons as much as economic. But there are a number of steps that do have to happen before that. There's a concept that has been developed regarding a shared island that I'm very, very committed to, which is before we get into discussions regarding the constitutional status of our country, we have to look at how we can further build up a shared feeling of this being a home for all of us. And then when and if that debate begins, I think it does need to have an important quality of honesty and rigour, reflecting that there would be both economic benefits and economic costs that we would need to consider.
You think would taxes have to go up? Do you think?
It's difficult to say at the moment, and we would need to have a clear study, and we would need to have objectivity in relation to that. But I do believe there would be very significant benefits as well. I would just look at an all-island economy here. What could happen with energy, for example, has been clear opportunities and clear benefits there. And we would also need a very honest and open discussion regarding what the state would look like, because we would need to have a generous approach to what a united Ireland would look like. And I don't want to see a debate that's based on simple, untested claims with all of the dangers that could bring in the future.
Let's move on. Pádraig McLaughlin of Sinn Féin says the government and other opposition parties haven't the nerve to block the appointment of Mairead Farrell as chair of the Public Accounts Committee. Is he right?
Well, that's quite the comment to make, and reflects an attitude clearly within Sinn Féin that they can just move on from the events of earlier on in the week with really significant questions still unanswered regarding what their leader knew or didn't know and what the culture is within Sinn Féin. And let's just see now across the coming weeks, the government will have to reach a further view in relation to the Public Accounts Committee, and whatever else the government and Fine Gael will be found, whatever views will be offered, we won't be found locking in bottle for testing what this government should do and what the next government should be.
Should Mairead Farrell, in your view, in your own personal view, should she be anointed as leader or as chair of the PAC?
So I've very much respect for Mairead Farrell on a personal level. She was my counterpart as a frontbench spokesperson within Sinn Féin. On a personal level, I can see the work she has done and could do. But I do need to consider broader issues, and so do the government parties. There are very significant unanswered questions from earlier on in the week in relation to what Sinn Féin knew and didn't know. And there's two in particular. The idea that there was an issue in relation to Deputy Stanley, and Mary Lou MacDonald is saying she never inquired as to what the issue is. And the second issue
Was that not fair enough? I mean, there is a process there. You don't interfere in that process?
I don't accept that. I don't accept that you have to be uninformed or ignorant of what an issue is in order to allow the process to test that issue to be impartial. Both can happen. And I just find it extraordinary that you would be informed that there is an issue about a senior member within your party, but you wouldn't ask what the issue is.
Okay.
And then
there was a second point.
And then the second
you.
issue then is the Sinn Féin member of the Seanad that resigned from Sinn Féin, but did not resign from the Seanad for a number of months after that. And then the glowing endorsement that person received when they left the Seanad, despite the knowledge that Sinn Féin had as to why they were leaving the Seanad. And Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil and the Green Party need to further consider those issues, but it's really the responsibility sits with Sinn Féin with regard to them.
Not a done deal anyway, you're saying?
No.
Okay. Can I just ask you lastly on that, the Irish Independent reporting today that the former Senator Neil O'Donnell continued to claim expenses for accommodation and travel to Leinster House after he told the party he was resigning from the Seanad. He continued to claim expenses up until his formal resignation. in December. Do you have a difficulty with that, or is that fair enough, given that he was technically still a senator?
Well, it just underlines the second point that I made. That individual left Sinn Féin in circumstances that are gradually becoming clearer, but remained on as a member of the Seanad. And when they left the Seanad, received a very, very warm endorsement from the leader of Sinn Féin. The simple question is, why did that happen?
Okay. Let's talk about your exact remit in public expenditure. Did you bring the supplementary estimates process forward to facilitate an early general election, Minister?
No, I did not. In other years, supplementary estimates have come forward around the same point in the year, or even earlier at other points. The reason why I did that is a number of government departments needed to have the money to honour decisions that were made in the budget. For example, paying out the energy credit and the need to make additional funding available to the Department of Education and the Department of Health.
7.1 billion. Whatever happened to Prudent Paschal?
The Prudent Paschal is evident in the scale of surpluses that we are now running. I've made the case over many years now for our public finances being in surplus, for not spending every cent that we have. We now have some of the largest surpluses in the European Union, and the fact that our budget surplus went up 2 weeks before the budget, but we didn't change our plans for next year, is testament to my and indeed the government's commitment to that.
Okay. Can I ask you just briefly about the Dublin Airport and the cap at Dublin Airport? Not quite in your constituency, but very close to your constituency. A lot of workers would live in your constituency. Is Michael O'Leary right? Should the government step in on that?
So the government does have a need to act and consider in relation to this, but much of the responsibility also sits with Dublin Airport in relation to it. I do want to see the matter change. It should not have got to this point. And I really also am struck by how public this debate has become so quickly. And we now need to find out and act in a way that will remedy this, because I want Dublin Airport to continue to be what it has been in the past, which is a driver of access and national economic growth.
See, Michael O'Leary listens to the show, and I know he's saying, yeah, come on, you have the power to do something about this.
There's an independent regulator an independent planning law.
So he's wrong. He's wrong when he says the government should step in.
Michael O'Leary, as always, has a point, but as always, not just in relation to claims that he would make, but a simple, difficult problem sometimes has complex solutions that do take time. And as I said, my objective is that Dublin Airport can be a driver of prosperity and access within our country. And beyond that, it's clearly causing challenges regarding how we're perceived.
Personally, you'd like to see the cap lifted,
if not lifted, I do believe we need to change it.
Okay, a couple of last things before we let you go, Minister. I won't ask you when the election will be, because you're going to tell me that's a matter for the Taoiseach, which is absolutely correct.
But you'll still ask me a version of the question.
I will, absolutely. When would you like the election to be?
When our work is done as a government.
And when will that be?
We have.
Your work is pretty much done. The finance bill is done.
Well, the finance bill's not yet done. It is introduced into the Dáil, which may be
what will be done by the end of.
It's a number of weeks ahead.
How long exactly?
Well, it would normally take until the end of November, early December for it to happen. I've done it many times myself.
It'll be quicker than that, won't it?
Well, look, the Taoiseach and Taoiseach and Minister O'Gorman will reach a view in relation to when the election should happen. I agree with the approach they're taking. We have decisions we still need to implement to allow the budget to come into effect, and we still have a bit of work ahead of us to do that.
But can you give us a date on the finance bill when that will be go through the Oireachtas?
As I said, in the current plan that is there at the moment, and the plan that is there and has been followed in other years, that's what I'm referring to, that work would take up much of November still.
Okay, but that would rule out an election, but I can't see it taking that long.
As I said, the view of the Taoiseach and the party leaders is let's complete our work first. I think that's the right decision to take. Like the number of people who I meet outside of your good self who ask me when the election will be isn't as much as you would think.
Yeah.
I think people want to and expect the government to complete its work first.
Just before we let you go, Irish Book Week kicks off tomorrow. Do you have a favourite book? I know you're a prolific reader. I don't know how you find the time, but...
I'm going to pick two, if I may.
Yeah,
I want to pick one Irish book, Long Island by Colm Tóibín, which is a sequel to Brooklyn. And I thought Brooklyn was a lovely book, but was loved by many. I think Long Island, which is the kind of sequel to it, is an unbelievably beautiful book.
It's on my bedside table. I haven't had a chance to read it
My
yet.
heart was in my mouth reading that book. It's so beautiful. And then one non-fiction book that I've been recommending for years, We're all familiar with George Orwell. We've a new George Orwell in our midst, which is an academic called Timothy Snyder, who wrote a very, very short book a number of years ago called On Tyranny, that any secondary school student could read. And it's about what happens when democracy begins to fade. And it's based on his study of history. And anybody who enjoys reading current affairs would read the book in a couple of hours. It's nearly a pamphlet.
Okay.
It's a masterpiece. And it's a book for our times.
On tyranny. Minister for Public Expenditure, Paschal and Reform, Paschal Donohue, thank you for talking to Newstalk.